Close your eyes and gently allow the weight of this day to slip from your shoulders. The conversations that lingered too long, the quiet worries that settled into your chest before the morning had even begun, the deep, unspoken tiredness that no amount of rest has quite reached. Just for tonight, you can set all of it down. You do not need to carry it here. Let your body sink a little deeper into the place beneath you. Feel the softness holding you, the quiet surrounding you, the gentle stillness that asks nothing more of you than to simply be. Breathe in slowly and exhale even more slowly, even more slowly. Again, breathe in and let it go. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to figure out. Because tonight, you are safe. Tonight, we are going somewhere far beyond the noise of this world, further back than the oldest memory you have ever known, further up than the highest place your imagination has ever reached. We are going to walk beside a man who lived so close to God, so steadily, so faithfully, that in the end, God simply could not let him go. A man who did not taste death, a man who walked and kept walking until heaven opened. His name was Enoch, and what he saw, what he carried, what he wrote down before he was taken, is not just an ancient mystery. It is a quiet answer, waiting for you. Here, tonight. So let your breathing slow even more. Feel the rhythm, soft, steady, like gentle waves, returning again and again to the shore. Let the outside world fade just a little further away, as though it is drifting behind a veil of soft darkness. You are not alone in this moment. You are held, watched over, known. And as you rest here, suspended between wakefulness and sleep, we will begin to open one of the oldest doors in all of Scripture, a story hidden in silence, a name almost passed over, a life that changed everything, not through noise or power, but through something far quieter, far deeper. Through walking with God. So stay here, just as you are. Let your body grow heavier, your thoughts softer, your breathing slower. There is nothing ahead that will rush you, nothing that will disturb you, only a story, unfolding gently, step by step, guiding you into rest. And in this very moment, open your heart and receive the peace that is coming. I invite you now to settle even deeper into this moment, as though the world outside has gently closed its doors, and you have stepped into a quiet place that exists just for you. Adjust your body one last time, slowly, without effort. Let your head find that perfect point of rest on your pillow. Let your shoulders sink, your back soften, your legs grow still. There is no rush here. Pull your blanket closer if you need warmth, or let the cool air rest lightly on your skin, whatever feels most comforting, most natural. Now, allow your eyes to close, fully, not tightly, just softly, as though they are floating downward into stillness. Take a slow breath in, deep, gentle, and then release it, longer, slower, heavier. Again. Breathe in and let it go. With every breath out, imagine your body becoming just a little heavier. Not weighed down, but gently anchored, like something finally allowed to rest after a long journey. Now bring your awareness to the very top of your head. There is nothing to change, nothing to fix, only to notice. Imagine a soft, warm presence there, like the last light of sunset, resting quietly, spreading slowly. Feel it move across your forehead, smoothing every small line, every trace of tension you didn't even realize you were holding. Your brow softens, your thoughts begin to quiet, like distant sounds fading into the night. Your eyes, let them rest deeper now, as though they are sinking into calm water, completely supported, completely still. Your cheeks relax, your jaw loosens, your tongue resting gently, with no effort at all. Breathe in, and as you exhale, feel that warmth moving downward, into your neck, unwinding every tight place, loosening the quiet burdens you carried through the day. Your shoulders now. This is where so much gathers. The things you said, the things you didn't say. The responsibilities, the expectations, the silent weight of it all. You do not need to carry any of it here. Let it slide away, slowly, gently, as though invisible hands are lifting it from you, piece by piece. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, let your shoulders drop even further. Soft, heavy, completely at rest. Now your arms. Feel the release moving from your upper arms, down through your elbows, your forearms, your wrists, into your hands. Your hands, no longer holding anything. No tension, no effort, just stillness. Let your fingers uncurl, naturally, as though they are letting go of everything at once. You are not holding anything anymore. You are being held. Let that truth settle gently into your chest. Your breathing, steady now, slow, like waves that come and go without needing your attention. If there is any tightness here, any quiet, heaviness, you do not need to push it away. Just breathe into it, softly, and let it loosen on its own. Breathe in, peace, and breathe out everything else. Your chest rises and falls, slowly, naturally, without effort. Now, your back, from the upper spine, down, through, the middle, to the base of your back. Feel the surface beneath you, steady, unmoving, completely reliable. You do not have to hold yourself up anymore. You can let go completely. Let your body sink deeper, just a little more, just enough to feel the difference. Now, your stomach. So often, this is where tension hides quietly, unnoticed, unspoken. Bring your awareness there, gently, gently, and allow it to soften. No force, no pressure, just a quiet permission to release. Your body knows how to rest when it feels safe. And right now, you are safe. Let that settle. Slowly, deeply, you are safe. Now, your hips, your thighs, heavy, supported, completely at ease. Your knees soften, your calves relax. Luft, luft. Your ankles loosen, your feet rest. Your feet no longer carrying you anywhere, no longer moving, just still and quiet. You your whole body now. From the top of your head to the tips of your toes. Heavy, calm, supported, at peace. Breathe slowly. Now, in and out and out. If a thought drifts in, let it pass, gently. Like a cloud moving across a wide, open sky. You do not need to follow it. You do not need to hold on to it. You can simply watch it fade and return to the quiet. Rest here for a moment. Feel the stillness growing around you and within you. Feel the gentle presence that surrounds you, closer than the air you breathe. God is here, not distant, not far away, but near, steady, constant. God is watching over you. You are safe. Let those words settle into the deepest part of you, the place that is still awake, even as the rest of you begins to drift. You are not alone. You have never been alone, and you do not need to carry anything through this night. Let your body grow heavier, your breathing softer, your thoughts quieter. Breathe slowly. Now, rest here, just a little longer, and let everything become still. There is a rhythm in the early pages of Scripture, a quiet, almost hypnotic pattern that repeats itself again and again, like footsteps echoing through a long corridor of time. A name is spoken, a life is lived, years are counted, and then, softly but firmly, the same ending comes. And he died, and he died, and he died, and he died. Adam, and he died. Seth, and he died. Enoch, and he died. Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, each name rising for a moment, and then fading into the same final line. It is a rhythm you can almost feel in your body, steady, unchanging, inevitable. And then, without warning, the rhythm breaks. The pattern pauses, hesitates, as though the story itself has taken a breath. Enoch, not, and he died. But something else, something so quiet, so brief, that it is easy to miss if you are not listening carefully, and yet so profound that it changes everything that came before it. Enoch walked with God, and he was not. For God took him. He was not. No explanation. No final moment described. No grave. No farewell. Just a man who was here and then was gone, carried out of the world while he was still breathing. If you let that image settle for a moment, it begins to feel less like a sentence and more like an invitation, an opening, a doorway into something deeper than the surface of the text. Because the question begins to rise quietly in the background. What does it mean to walk with God? Not to visit, not to reach for him in moments of fear or need, but to walk. The word itself carries movement, continuity, closeness over time. It is not a single step, not a single moment of faith or devotion. It is a life lived side by side, day after day, breath after breath, through every ordinary hour. And this is where the story becomes something you can feel, because Enoch was not born into a quiet world. He was born into a world already drifting, already beginning to lose its way. The memory of Eden still lingered, not as a distant myth, but as something almost within reach, something the older generations could still speak of, with a kind of aching clarity. The garden had been real. The presence of God had been close. The world had once been whole, and now it was not. Something had fractured, and that fracture was widening, slowly, steadily, across the generations. Some people felt it, like a quiet ache they could not explain, a longing for something lost, something beyond the reach of their hands. And those people began to call upon the name of the Lord. But others chose a different path. They turned their attention downward, toward what they could build, what they could control, what they could hold. Cities began to rise, structures of stone and ambition, places where human effort replaced divine presence. And for a time, it seemed to work. Life continued. Culture grew. Music was created. Tools were forged. But underneath it all, something was missing. And that absence created a hunger that could not be satisfied by anything the world offered. Enoch felt that hunger. From a young age, there was something in him that did not settle, something that could not be filled by noise or movement or the ordinary rhythms of life. While others gathered, he would drift away. Not in isolation, but in quiet search. He would climb the hills, alone, where the world stretched wide and open, where the sky felt close enough to touch. And there, under the vastness of stars, he would sit. Not speaking, not striving, just listening. As though something beyond the visible world was calling him, softly, patiently, waiting for him to notice. And over time, he did. This is the part of the story that is often misunderstood or overlooked entirely, because there is no moment where everything changes all at once. No sudden transformation, no dramatic turning point. Just a man who kept showing up. Day after day, year after year, he chose to turn toward God. In the quiet, in the ordinary, in the unseen spaces of life. He brought everything with him. His questions, his uncertainties, his small joys, his quiet griefs, the simple details of each passing day. Nothing was too small. Nothing was too ordinary. All of it became part of the walk. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to shift. The distance between heaven and earth, between the human and the divine, began to thin. Not because Enoch forced it, not because he achieved something extraordinary in a single moment, but because he stayed. He remained. He continued walking. Scripture tells us that he walked with God for 300 years, 3 centuries. Let that settle for a moment. Not a season, not a phase, not a brief period of devotion. 300 years of choosing, again and again, to stay close. 300 years of mornings where he woke up and turned his attention toward God. 300 years of nights where he rested in that same presence. Through change, through growth, through everything, life carried with it something. He walked, and something happened in that long, steady closeness. Something quiet, but powerful. Enoch became aligned, not with the world around him, but with something deeper, something eternal. His thoughts, his desires, his awareness began to move in rhythm with the presence he walked beside. Like two travelers on the same road, who have walked together so long that their steps begin to fall in sync, without effort, without thought. This is not the kind of connection that appears suddenly. It is formed slowly, gently, over time. It is built in the unseen moments, the small choices, the quiet turning of the heart. And in that closeness, something else began to open. Heaven, not as a distant place, but as a reality, just beyond the veil of what could be seen. Enoch did not chase visions. He did not seek power, or knowledge, or recognition. He simply remained close. And because of that, he began to see. Not with his eyes alone, but with something deeper, something formed through years of presence. The world around him continued to drift, to change, to move further from its origin. But Enoch remained anchored and anchored. Not in fear, not in resistance, but in relationship. This is what makes his story so different. Because it is not a story about escaping the world. It is a story about walking through it, without losing connection to what is eternal. And then, one day, after centuries of quiet faithfulness, something happened that had never happened before. There was no warning, no announcement, no gathering of witnesses, just a continuation of the same walk he had taken every day. Step after step, breath after breath, presence within presence, till the boundary between earth and heaven simply disappeared. And he was not because he was taken away in force, not because he was removed suddenly, but because he had already been living so close to God that the transition required almost no movement at all, like stepping from one room into another, like passing through a doorway that had been open all along. God took him, not as a distant act, not as a sudden interruption, but as the natural continuation of a life already lived in his presence. And if you rest with that image, just for a moment, it begins to change the way you understand everything. Because the story of Enoch is not only about what happened at the end, it is about what happened every day before it. The quiet choices, the steady turning, the willingness to remain, even when nothing extraordinary seemed to be happening. And here, in the stillness of this moment, as your body rests and your breathing slows, there is something in his story that reaches toward you, not as a demand, not as a pressure, but as a gentle invitation to walk, not perfectly, not completely, not all at once, but simply to begin or to continue, step by step, breath by breath, 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 in quiet awareness that you are not walking alone. Because the same presence that walked with Enoch is here, even now, closer than you think, steady, patient, waiting for you to notice and to take the next step beside him. Before we can understand what Enoch saw, before we follow him beyond the boundaries of the world, we must first stand where he stood. We must look at the world through his eyes, not as a distant story, not as history safely behind us, but as a living, breathing reality unfolding around him, shaping every step he took. And as you rest here, breathing slowly, letting your body grow heavier, allow your mind to drift gently into that ancient world, a world both familiar and deeply unfamiliar, a world where something beautiful had been lost and something dangerous had begun to grow in its place. The world before the flood was not simply a world of people doing wrong things. It was something quieter than that, and in some ways, far more tragic. It was a world that had forgotten what it was made for. To understand this, we must go back, not just to Enoch, but to the memory that still lingered in the air of his time, the memory of a garden. Adam and Eve had walked with God, not in metaphor, not in longing, but in reality. They had heard his voice, felt his presence, lived in a world where nothing was divided, nothing was broken, nothing was hidden. And when they left that garden, they carried something with them. Not just the consequence, not just the separation. They carried the memory. A memory of what it felt like to be whole. A memory of what it felt like to belong. And that memory did not disappear. It passed from generation to generation, like a quiet echo moving through time, becoming something that settled deep inside the human soul. An ache, a longing, a sense that something was not right, that something had been lost, that the world, as it was not the world as it was meant to be. Some people felt that ache, and they turned toward it. They lifted their eyes. They called upon the name of the Lord, not because they had all the answers, but because the longing inside them would not let them settle for anything less. These were the ones who remembered, the ones who held on to the faint light, even as the world around them began to dim. But not everyone chose that path. Many, perhaps most, chose something else. Instead of reaching upward, they turned outward and downward toward what they could build, what they could control, what they could shape with their own hands. And slowly, quietly, a different kind of world began to rise. Cities, structures of stone and intention, places where human effort replaced dependence, where walls gave the illusion of safety, where systems took the place of trust. There is nothing inherently wrong with building, nothing wrong with creating, nothing wrong with shaping the world. But something shifted beneath it all. The heart of it changed. The cities were not built in partnership with God, but in place of Him. We do not need the garden, they seem to say. We can make something better. And for a while, it seemed convincing. Culture flourished. Music filled the air. Craftsmanship advanced. Tools became more refined, more powerful, more precise. The world did not look broken on the surface. In many ways, it looked impressive. But underneath, something was missing. And that absence began to grow. Because the ache, the deep human longing for God, cannot be removed. It can only be redirected. And when it is not filled with what is true, it begins to reach for anything that feels close. People became hungry, not just for food or shelter, but for meaning, for fulfillment, for something that would quiet the restlessness inside them. And when that hunger is left unmet, it begins to change people. At first, only in small ways. A slight shift toward self, toward control, toward taking instead of trusting. Then a little more, a little harder, a little louder, until what was once unthinkable begins to feel normal. Violence did not enter the world all at once. It slipped in quietly. A harsh word here, an act of revenge there, a justification whispered in the mind, a story told to make the wrong feel right. And then one day, someone spoke it aloud. A man named Lamech, recorded in the ancient text, stood before his wives and boasted that he had killed a man. Not in defense, not in desperation, but in retaliation. And he did not speak it with sorrow. He spoke it with pride. What? And this is the moment where something shifts. Not just the act itself, but the celebration of it. Because when harm becomes something to boast about, something admired, something repeated, it begins to spread. And it did. The world grew louder, harsher, more unstable. That the strong took what they wanted. The weak had little protection. And what began as isolated acts became patterns, then systems, then culture. Even those who once remembered, those who had called upon the name of the Lord, began to drift. Slowly, quietly, almost without noticing. They began to mix, to merge, to adopt the ways of the world around them. The distinction blurred. The light dimmed, the memory faded, and the ache remained. But now, it was buried beneath noise, beneath activity, beneath endless attempts to fill it with something else. This is the world Enoch lived in. Not a world without beauty, not a world without life, but a world where the center had shifted, where the presence of God was no longer the foundation, but a distant thought, a fading echo. And yet, beneath all of this, something even deeper was happening. Something most people could not see. Something Enoch, because of his closeness to God, began to sense. There was a weight in the world, a heaviness, a kind of distortion, like a subtle imbalance that touched everything. It was not only moral, it was not only cultural, it was something spiritual. Something had crossed into the human story that did not belong there. At first, it was only a whisper, a rumor carried from one place to another, stories that sounded too strange to believe, and yet too consistent to ignore. Stories of beings, watchers, observing, and then no longer only observing. Stories that moved through the people like wind through tall grass, bending attention, stirring unease. Most dismissed them. Most were too occupied, too distracted, too deeply immersed in the world they were building to stop and ask whether something unseen had begun to shape what they could see. But Enoch felt it, not as fear, but as awareness. The same closeness that allowed him to walk with God also allowed him to sense when something was not aligned. Like a musician who hears when a note is out of tune, even in the middle of a full song. He could feel it. The world was not just drifting. It was being pulled. And yet, life continued. People woke, worked, built, celebrated, argued, dreamed, just as they always had. Because the most dangerous changes are the ones that happen slowly. The ones that do not interrupt life, but reshape it from within. And so the world moved forward, step by step, generation by generation, carrying within it both the memory of what was lost and the weight of what was coming. And here, in this quiet moment, as you rest, as your breathing slows, there is something important to notice. 1. You are not so far from that world. The same patterns, the same distractions, the same attempts to fill a deeper longing with surface things, they echo, even now. But just as it was then, there was always a remnant. Always someone who noticed. Always someone who chose differently. Enoch was one of them. And as the world around him moved further away from its source, he moved closer, step by step, breath by breath, walking steadily, quietly, with God. And it is from within that world that the next part of the story begins to unfold. So rest here for a moment. Let your body remain still, your thoughts soft, your breathing slow, because what comes next is not only the story of what went wrong, but the revealing of what had been hidden beneath it all. There are some boundaries in creation that feel invisible, and yet they hold everything together. You cannot see them with your eyes. You cannot touch them with your hands, but they are there, steady, precise, quietly separating what belongs from what does not. The boundary between light and darkness, the boundary between sea and land, the boundary between heaven and earth. And for a long time, those boundaries held. The heavens remained, the heavens filled with beings of light, order, purpose, each one created with intention, each one moving in harmony with the will of the one who made them. Before the first human breath, before the dust of the earth was shaped into life, the angels already existed. Not a few, not a handful, but countless, described in ancient words as hosts beyond numbering, each one reflecting something of the glory they were formed from. Some remained close to the throne, their existence woven into worship, into presence, into the endless awareness of God. Late. Some were messengers, crossing between realms, carrying words that shaped history. Some governed, unseen, guiding the movement of stars, the turning of seasons, the quiet systems that keep the world in order. And among them, there was another group. They were given a different kind of task, not to rule, not to declare, not to remain only in the heights of heaven, but to watch. They were called the Watchers. Their role was subtle, but profound. They were placed at the edge, the boundary between heaven and earth, close enough to see, to observe, to understand, but far enough to remain what they were. They watched humanity. They saw the first generations rise and struggle. They saw the memory of Eden still alive in the early hearts of men, and then slowly fading. They saw the cities being built, the ambitions growing, the shift from dependence to self-sufficiency. They saw beauty and brokenness side by side. And at first, they only watched. But watching can become something else. When attention lingers too long, it can turn into curiosity. And curiosity, if left unchecked, can become desire. The book of Enoch tells us that the Watchers began to notice something. Not just humanity as a whole, but something specific. The daughters of men, their beauty, their presence, their humanity, something about it stirred a response. The Watchers had not been created to carry. And here, something began to shift. Not suddenly, not all at once, but quietly, among a group, a gathering, a shared awareness that something had changed inside them. 200 of them came together, not scattered, not separate, together. And they went to a place where the boundary between heaven and earth felt thin, a mountain, high, silent, removed from the noise of the world below. The ancient text calls it Mount Hermon, a place where the sky feels close, where the air is thin, where, standing there, you can almost believe you are between worlds. And it was there, on that height, that they made a decision. Not in ignorance, not in confusion, but with full awareness. Their leader, named Semjaza, spoke first. He understood what they were considering. He understood the weight of it. And his concern was not whether it was right. He already knew it was not. His concern was whether the others would follow through, whether he would stand alone in the consequence of what they were about to choose. And so, they did something that reveals everything about the moment. They made an oath, all of them. They bound themselves together so that none could turn back, so that if judgment came, it would come to all. This was not temptation. This was commitment. They chose, together, to cross the boundary. And once that oath was spoken, the path was set. They descended from the heights into the human world. Now, pause here for a moment and let that image settle. Beings of light, stepping into a realm they were never meant to inhabit, not as messengers, not as observers, but as participants. The line between heaven and earth, broken, and what followed was not immediate chaos. At first, it may have seemed almost subtle. The watchers did not come empty-handed. They brought knowledge. They taught things that humanity had not yet discovered, not yet learned, not yet been prepared to hold. One of them, Azazel, is remembered most clearly. Because what he gave changed everything. He taught the shaping of metal, the forging of weapons, the creation of tools designed not just to build, but to destroy. He revealed methods of adornment, of beauty shaped into influence, into control. He introduced knowledge of hidden forces, of signs, of practices that reached beyond the natural boundaries of the human world. Now listen carefully, because this is where the story becomes deeper than it first appears. Nothing they taught was entirely foreign. Metal exists. Beauty exists. Knowledge exists. But what they did was give these things before the time, outside of the relationship, without the wisdom that would make them safe. It was not the creation of evil. It was the distortion of good. The same pattern, repeated. Something true, offered in the wrong way, at the wrong time, for the wrong purpose. And humanity, already hungry, already searching, received it. Because when people are searching for something, and they cannot find the right source, they will take whatever feels close, and the world began to change, not only in behavior, but in structure. Power increased, faster than wisdom. Knowledge expanded, beyond understanding. And the balance that once held creation together began to tilt. The watchers had crossed the boundary, but the deeper consequence was that they brought that boundary with them and shattered it within the human story. Heaven and earth, no longer separate. And once that line is broken, it is not easily restored. Then, Enoch watched this unfold, not from a distance, not as an outsider, but as someone living inside it, feeling the shift, sensing the weight, recognizing that something far beyond ordinary human failure was now shaping the world. This was not just sin. This was invasion. Something had entered that did not belong. And yet, life continued. People still woke in the morning, still built, still spoke, still moved through their days. Because the most dangerous changes are the ones that do not stop life, but alter its direction. And beneath it all, the consequences were already forming, because choices made with full awareness carry a weight that cannot be undone. The watchers knew. They understood the boundary. They chose to cross it anyway. And in doing so, they set something in motion that no one, not even they, could fully control. So rest here, just for a moment. Let your breathing remain slow, steady. Feel the stillness beneath the story, because what has begun here is not the end. It is only the beginning of what will follow, and what follows will change the world in ways no one can reverse. There is a moment in every unfolding story when something shifts beyond recovery, when what has been set in motion begins to move on its own, no longer guided, no longer contained, no longer under the control of those who began it. It does not happen all at once. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize the world you are standing in is no longer the same world you once knew. For the ancient world before the flood, that moment came with the birth of the Nephilim. The word itself carries a weight, an echo of something fallen, something that does not belong fully to one place or another, something that exists between, and because of that, disrupts both. The ancient text tells us that when the watchers crossed the boundary, when heaven and earth were joined in a way they were never meant to be, something new entered the world. Knowledge, not just influence. Life. Children were born. But these were not ordinary children. They were not fully human, and not fully what their fathers had been. They were something in between. And when two worlds combine in a way they were never designed to, the result is never stable. At first, perhaps, there was awe. These beings were different, stronger, larger, more powerful than anything humanity had seen. They stood out, unmistakably, walking among ordinary people like living symbols of something beyond human limits. And for a time, they may have been admired, seen as mighty, remembered as men of renown. Stories would have spread, whispered, repeated, growing with each telling. But power, without alignment, without restraint, without the grounding of what is good, does not remain neutral. It begins to move. It begins to consume. The book of Enoch describes them not just as powerful, but as insatiable. They required more than the world could give. At first, they took from the land food, resources, everything that had been cultivated by human hands. And when that was no longer enough, they turned to the animals. And when even that was not enough, they turned to humanity itself. Pause here and feel the weight of that, because this is the moment where the story crosses into something deeper, something heavier, something that cannot be softened or explained away. The world was no longer simply broken. It was being consumed. The Nephilim did not operate within limits. They did not recognize boundaries. They did not stop. And when there is no boundary, no restraint, no internal alignment with what is good, destruction becomes inevitable, not as a choice, but as a consequence. And it did not stop there. The ancient text tells us that eventually, even their own kind turned against each other. Because when existence is driven only by hunger, by power, by taking, there is no end point. There is only escalation. And escalation always turns inward. The strong consume the weak, until only the strong remain. And then the strong consume each other. This is what happens when a system loses its center. When there is no anchor, no reference point, no connection to what is true. Everything begins to collapse. Not from the outside, but from within. And alongside this physical destruction, something else was spreading, something quieter, but just as dangerous. The knowledge that had been given by the Watchers began to take root. Weapons became more advanced. Violence became more efficient. Beauty became a tool, not for joy, but for control. Spiritual practices, once grounded in reverence, became distorted, reaching into places that were never meant to be accessed. The world was filling, not just with suffering, but with confusion. Because when truth is mixed with distortion, it becomes harder to see clearly. What once felt wrong begins to feel normal. What once felt sacred begins to feel ordinary. And slowly, the entire structure of reality, as humanity understood it, begins to shift. This is what made the situation irreversible. Not just the presence of the Nephilim, but the way everything around them began to change. The earth itself, as the ancient text suggests, the balance, the harmony, the quiet order that once held creation together, was disrupted. And beneath it all, something deeper was happening. The cries of those who suffered began to rise, not always in words, not always spoken aloud, but in the silent language of pain, of loss, of injustice. And those cries did not disappear. They moved upward, beyond the noise, beyond the chaos, beyond the visible world. They reached a place where nothing is ignored. And while all of this unfolded, while the world moved further and further from what it was meant to be, Enoch walked. He did not fix it. He did not stop it. He did not try to control what could not be controlled. He remained steady, present, aligned. And this is important, because it reveals something that often goes unnoticed. Even in a world that has gone beyond repair, even in a moment where consequences can no longer be reversed, there is still a way to live differently. Not by escaping, not by denying, but by choosing, again and again, what to align with. Enoch did not become like the world around him. He did not absorb the distortion. He did not let the darkness define him. He walked with God, and that walk became the one thing that remained untouched, unchanged, steady, in the middle of everything that was falling apart. So, as you rest here, listening, breathing slowly, letting the story unfold around you, there is something in this chapter that reaches quietly into your own life. Because you did not create the world you live in. You did not design its systems, its struggles, its brokenness. Like Enoch, you arrived into something already in motion, already complex, already carrying both beauty and weight. And yet, within that, there is still a choice. Not to control everything, not to fix everything, but to walk, to choose where you place your attention, your trust, your alignment, step by step, breath by breath. Even when the world feels uncertain, even when things seem beyond control, because the story of the Nephilim is not only about destruction, it is about what happens when power is separated from truth. And the story of Enoch, moving quietly alongside it, is about what happens when a human being refuses to let go of God. Rest here for a moment. Let your body remain still, your breathing slow, your thoughts soft, because the weight of what we have heard is real. But it is not the end. Something has already begun to respond. Something beyond the world, beyond the chaos. Something that has seen everything. And what comes next will reveal that nothing has gone unnoticed. There is something deep within the human soul, a quiet question that rises in the darkest moments, when the world feels heavy, when wrong seems to go unanswered, when suffering stretches on without explanation. Is anyone seeing this? Is anyone listening? And if they are, will they respond? The world Enoch lived in had reached that kind of moment. The weight of what had been set in motion, the corruption, the violence, the distortion of everything that was once good, had grown so vast, so overwhelming, that it seemed as though it might continue without end. From the surface, life, still, moved. People still woke, still spoke, still walked through their days. But beneath it all, something was crying out, not always with words, not always in ways that could be heard by human ears. But the earth itself, the lives within it, the suffering, carried quietly in unseen places. It was rising. And what the ancient text reveals, with a kind of quiet certainty, is this. It did not go unheard. The cries rose, beyond the noise of the world, beyond the shifting patterns of human life, beyond everything visible, until they reached heaven. Pause here for a moment, and let that settle. Nothing was lost. Nothing dissolved into silence. Every cry, every moment of pain, every injustice, every unseen wound, arrived, and they were received, not by distant observers, not by indifferent forces, but by beings who stood in the presence of God. The text speaks of four archangels, each distinct, each carrying a different reflection of divine purpose. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, not symbols, not distant myths, but living presences, aware, attentive, responding. They saw. They did not turn away. They did not dismiss what was happening. They felt the weight of it. And in that awareness, something remarkable happened. They spoke, not with certainty, not with distance, but with honesty. They brought what they had seen directly before God. They did not hide their confusion. They did not pretend to understand. They asked, "Why is this allowed? What are we to do?" There is something deeply human, even in that moment, because it reveals that even beings of immense power, standing in the presence of the divine, still bring their questions, still seek understanding, still long for resolution, and God does not silence them. He answers, not with haste, not with reaction, not with sudden force, but with precision. Because what unfolds next is not chaos, meeting chaos. It is order, responding to disorder. Each archangel is given a role, not randomly, not generally, specifically, exactly aligned with who they are and what they carry. Raphael, whose very name carries the meaning of healing, is sent first, not to fight, not to argue, but to bind, to go to Azazel, the one who had introduced corrupted knowledge, and to stop the source. Then, to remove what had been poisoning the world at its root. This is not anger. This is protection, the removal of something that cannot be allowed to continue. Then Gabriel, the messenger, the one who speaks, is sent, not with a weapon, but with a word, to turn the destructive force of the Nephilim inward, to allow what had been unleashed without restraint to collapse under its own nature. Because when something is built on consumption, it eventually consumes itself. Michael, the one who stands firm, the one associated with confrontation, is sent to the leaders, to those who chose, fully aware, fully conscious, to cross the boundary. He binds them, not briefly, not lightly, but completely, sealed away, removed from influence, held until the time appointed for final judgment. And Uriel, the one who reveals, who brings light to what is hidden, remains connected to the unfolding understanding, guiding, showing, illuminating what must be known. Each action, precise. Each response, measured. Nothing random, nothing wasted. And in the middle of all of this, there is something else, something quieter, but perhaps more important than everything else combined. God speaks, not only of what is being done, but of what will be. He speaks of an ending, a future, a time when the earth will be cleansed, when what has been broken will be restored, when righteousness will take root again, and peace will not be temporary, but lasting. This is not said after everything is fixed. It is spoken in the middle of the crisis, before resolution, before restoration, before the visible change, because from where God stands, the ending is already certain. And this is the part that reaches into your life, even now. Because whatever you are carrying tonight, whatever feels unresolved, unseen, unanswered, the story does not tell you that everything is already easy. It does not say that suffering is not real. It says something deeper. It says it is seen. Fully, completely, without loss. And it says response is already in motion, even when it is not yet visible. Heaven does not rush, but heaven does not ignore. There is a timing, a precision, a depth of understanding that moves beyond what we can measure. The cries reached the throne, and the throne responded, not with panic, not with delay born of indifference, but with action, already aligned, already unfolding, already moving toward a conclusion that has been known from the beginning. So as you rest here, breathing slowly, letting your body sink deeper into stillness, there is something you can release. You do not have to carry the weight of unanswered things into your sleep. You do not have to hold every question, every tension, every unresolved piece of your life, because you are not the one responsible for holding it all together. There is a place beyond what you can see, where everything is already known. Already held, already being responded to, with a precision you do not need to manage. Let that truth settle, slowly, gently, like a quiet reassurance moving through your body. Nothing you carry is unseen. Nothing you feel is ignored. And nothing that truly matters will be left unanswered. Breathe. Let your body grow heavier. Let your thoughts soften. Let the need to understand everything fade just a little. Because the story is still unfolding. And what comes next will reveal that the response of heaven was only the beginning. There are moments in a human life, quiet, almost unnoticed at first, that divide everything into before and after. Not because they are loud, not because they arrive with warning, but because they open something that cannot be closed again. For Enoch, that moment came, not on a mountain, not in a crowd, not in the middle of anything extraordinary, but in the stillness of an ordinary night. He was in his home, the same place he had rested so many times before, the same walls, the same quiet, the same rhythm of evening, settling into silence. And yet, something was different. He was not at ease. His heart was heavy, not for himself, but for others. The watchers, those who had crossed the boundary, those who had set so much in motion, had come to him. Not in power, not in pride, but in shame. They could not lift their own voices toward God. Not anymore. Something in them knew what they had done could not be undone, and the distance they had created felt too great to cross. So they came to a human, to the one man whose life had been shaped by closeness, by steady presence, by years of walking with God. They asked him to speak for them. Pause here and feel the weight of that moment. Beings who once stood in light, now unable to pray. And a man, made from dust, asked to carry their plea. Enoch did not refuse. Not because he agreed with them, not because he excused what had been done, but because mercy had become part of him. 300 years of walking with God had formed something inside him, something that responded not with judgment, but with compassion. So he prayed. He lay down, and he spoke, carrying words that were not his own, lifting a petition that did not belong to him, into the silence. And somewhere, between waking and sleep, everything changed. The world he knew began to loosen its hold. The boundaries that had always been there, unseen but firm, began to open. He felt movement, not of his body alone, but of something deeper, something that does not usually move beyond its place. The text describes winds lifting him, clouds carrying him, not violently, not suddenly, but steadily, as though he was being drawn upward by something that had always known him. The ground faded. Dude. The familiar fell away, and he found himself at the edge of everything he had ever understood. What he saw first was not what he expected. Not warmth, not light, but cold. A vast, surrounding cold, like ice, like snow, like something untouched by the warmth of the world. This is where many would turn back, if turning back were possible. Because this cold was not emptiness. It was purity, a kind of holiness so complete, so far beyond human experience, that the body responds with awe, with stillness, with something close to fear, but not fear of harm, fear of being in the presence of something entirely other. And then, beyond that, he saw it, a structure, not made by human hands, not shaped by anything earthly. Crystal, fire, something living, something that seemed both solid and moving at the same time. A house, and beyond it, another. Demine. Greater, more intense. A place where the very ground seemed to burn, where the walls, the ceiling, the space itself carried a presence that could not be ignored. And, at the center, a throne. But even that word feels too small. Because what Enoch encountered was not an object, not a shape, not something that could be fully described. It was presence, weight, glory, something so immense that the mind cannot hold it, The eyes cannot fully see it. The body cannot stand before it. He fell, not by choice, not as a gesture, but because there was no other response. Every part of him recognized what he was before. One. The source, the center, the one he had walked with all those years, now revealed, not in quiet closeness, but in overwhelming fullness. He lay there, trembling, unable to lift his face, unable to move, suspended between awe and surrender. And then something happened, something that changes everything. The voice spoke, not through another, not through distance, directly to him. Come near, Enoch, and hear my word. Enoch, hear. Enoch, hear. Left 2 words. Come near. In the presence of something so vast, so holy, so beyond anything human, there was invitation, not distance, not rejection, not silence, but nearness. An angel lifted him, gently, not forcing, not rushing, but guiding, bringing him closer, step by step, into a place no human had ever stood. And there, he listened. God spoke to him, not in fragments, not in symbols alone, but with clarity. The petition of the watchers would not be granted. They had chosen with full understanding, with full awareness. And what they had set in motion carried consequences that could not simply be removed. But Enoch was not brought there only to hear judgment. He was brought there to see, to witness, to understand something far greater than the moment he had come from. He was shown the structure of creation, the places where the winds are held and released, the chambers of snow, of frost, of rain, each one governed, each one ordered. He was shown the paths of the stars, the turning of time, the rhythms that move without interruption, without failure. He was taken to the edges of the earth, to places where the visible and invisible meet, where boundaries exist that most never perceive. And then, something deeper. He was shown the places of the dead, not as absence, not as nothingness, but as holding, separated, distinct, each place carrying those who had lived, waiting for what was to come. Sham, the righteous in light, others in shadow. Each one known, each one accounted for. And Enoch asked, why wait? Why not resolve everything now? Why not bring justice immediately? And the answer came, quietly, but with weight. Because the story is not incomplete. Because what is being done is not partial. It is whole. And what is whole requires time, requires fullness, requires the entire arc to reach its end. Enoch saw not just moments, but movement. Not just events, but purpose. And through all of it, he wrote, not for himself, not for recognition, but because he was told that others would need to know that one day people would live in a world that felt uncertain, heavy, unresolved. And they would ask the same question. Is anything being seen? Is anything being held? Is anything beyond this real? And Enoch, having walked through heaven, returned with the answer. Yes, everything is seen, everything is held, everything is known, and at the center of it all is a presence that says, even now. Come near. So, as you rest here, breathing slowly, letting your body sink deeper into stillness, let that invitation settle within you, not as something distant, not as something unreachable, but as something close, gentle, present. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to see what Enoch saw. You only need to rest in the same nearness that carried him beyond the world and into the presence he had been walking with all along. Breathe slowly now and let yourself drift, held, seen, and quietly invited closer. There are moments in Enoch's journey where what he sees is no longer something the human mind can easily hold, where the images stretch beyond familiar shapes, beyond language, beyond anything that belongs to the daffest, ordinary world. And yet, they are not shown to overwhelm him. They are shown to reveal, to uncover what has always been there, hidden beneath the surface of what we call reality. And as you rest here, breathing slowly, letting your body remain still, allow yourself to follow gently, not with effort, not with strain, but with quiet openness, as though you are simply being carried along beside him, watching, listening, receiving. After the first encounter, after the voice that called him near, after the overwhelming presence of the throne, Enoch is not sent back immediately. He is led further, deeper, beyond what most would ever imagine exists. An angel walks with him, not rushing, not explaining everything at once, but guiding, step by step, as though each vision must be seen in its own time, allowed to settle, allowed to speak. They move toward the edges of the earth, not edges in the way we think of them, not borders drawn on maps, but boundaries of experience, places where the visible world begins to thin and something else begins to show through. And there, Enoch sees something that changes the way he understands everything. He sees the storehouses, the treasuries, places where the forces of the natural world are kept, held, and released. The winds, not random, not chaotic, not drifting without purpose, but gathered, directed, each one assigned, each one released at the appointed time. He sees where they are held, like unseen chambers, vast, ordered, governed. And the same with the snow, the frost, the rain, the lightning. Each one, not accidental, not uncontrolled, but part of a system, a structure, something far more intentional than the surface of the world reveals. Pause here and let that thought settle. What feels random is not random. What feels uncertain is not without order. There is a governance, a quiet administration behind everything that moves, and Enoch sees it, not as theory, not as belief, but as reality. He is shown the paths of the sun, the movement through gates, the rhythm of rising and setting, not simply as light in the sky, but as something precise, measured, faithful. The moon, too, in its cycles, its waxing and waning, its quiet rhythm, marking time. And in these movements, there is a message, not spoken in words, but written in light. Faithfulness, consistency, Promise. The world below may change, may drift, may collapse into disorder, but above, the pattern holds. The order remains, and the one who set it in motion continues to sustain it. They move further, to places where the land changes, where the mountains rise in forms unlike anything known, where valleys stretch deeper than sight can follow. And in one of these places, Enoch sees something that stays with him. 4 hollow places, separated, distinct, carved into the unseen structure of the earth. And in them, he sees the souls of the dead. Not gone, not dissolved, not lost, but held, each one in its place, according to what has been lived, what has been chosen, what has been carried. Some in light, some in shadow, some waiting in peace, others in unrest. But none forgotten, none unaccounted for. And Enoch asks, quietly, with the same honesty that has followed him through every step of this journey, why do they wait? If the righteous are known, if their lives are seen, if their faithfulness is real, why not bring them fully into what is promised? Why this waiting? And the answer comes, not as explanation alone, but as something deeper, something that reshapes the question itself. Because the story is not finished, because what is being done is not partial, it is complete. And what is complete must unfold in its fullness. Nothing is rushed, nothing is cut short, nothing is resolved halfway. The justice that is coming is not immediate, because it is total. And total restoration requires the whole story to reach its end. Let that settle gently. What feels like delay is not neglect. It is precision. It is care. It is the unfolding of something that will not be broken or incomplete. Enoch continues. He is shown the tree of life, not as memory, but as reality, something that still exists, still rooted, still waiting. He sees mountains of fire, rivers that move with a force beyond anything earthly, places where the boundaries between elements blur, where what we call natural and supernatural are no longer separate. And through all of it, there is structure, order, purpose, nothing drifting, nothing forgotten, nothing outside of awareness. And perhaps the most important thing is not what he sees, but what he understands. Because each vision, each place, each moment builds something inside him, a knowing, a certainty, that the world, as it appears from the surface, is only a fraction of what is real. That beneath, above, beyond, there is a depth, a structure, a care that holds everything together. And that suffering, no matter how hidden, no matter how silent, does not disappear. It is held, it is seen, it is accounted for. So as you rest here, breathing slowly, letting your thoughts soften, there is something in this that belongs to you, because you may not see what Enoch saw. You may not walk through those places, but you live in the same reality. A world where what is visible is not the whole story. Where what feels uncertain is still held within something certain. Where what feels delayed is still moving toward completion. You are not drifting. You are not lost in something unstructured. You are held within something vast, ordered, known. And at the center of it all is the same presence, that called Enoch, near. The same voice that spoke into the stillness. The same awareness that sees everything. So let your body rest deeper now. Let your breathing slow even more. Let the need to understand every detail gently fade. Because you do not need to see everything. To be held within it, you do not need to know every answer. To be part of something that is already complete. Rest here, in the quiet, in the stillness, in the knowing that nothing is outside of what has already been seen, already been held, already moving toward its perfect end. There is a place, deep within the human heart, that longs for something very specific, something quiet, but unshakable, the need to know that what is wrong will not remain wrong forever. Not out of anger, not out of a desire to see harm returned for harm, but out of something older, something woven into the very structure of our being. The need for justice, the need to know that what has been done has been seen and will be answered. In the world Enoch witnessed, that need had grown heavy, almost unbearable, because what had been set in motion by the watchers had spread beyond anything human effort could contain. The boundary had been crossed, the order had been disrupted, and now the question remained. Would anything respond? The answer comes quietly, but with absolute certainty. Yes, and when that response begins, it is not chaotic, not emotional, not driven by impulse. It is precise, measured, complete. The archangels move, not all at once, not without direction, but according to what has already been spoken, already determined, already aligned with what must be done. Raphael goes first. There is no battle described, no struggle, no resistance that changes the outcome. He finds Azazel, the one who had taught, who had introduced knowledge without wisdom, power without restraint, distortion without understanding. And he binds him, hands and feet, not symbolically, not partially, completely. He is taken and cast into a place of isolation, a desert, a place cut off, covered, hidden, where light does not reach. And there he remains, not destroyed, not erased, but contained, because what he carried, what he released into the world, could not be allowed to continue. This is not anger. This is protection, the removal of a source that had begun to poison everything it touched. Pause here and feel the weight of that. Because judgment in this moment is not about punishment alone. It is about stopping what cannot continue. Then Gabriel moves, not with force, but with something more subtle, more exact. He goes to those born from the union, the Nephilim, the beings whose existence had already begun to unravel the world. And he does not strike them down directly. He allows their own nature to complete its path. He turns them against each other. Because what is built on power without restraint cannot sustain itself. It must collapse. It must consume until there is nothing left to consume. And so, what they had unleashed outward begins to turn inward. The destruction completes itself. There is something deeply unsettling and deeply revealing in this, because it shows that some forms of judgment are not imposed from the outside. They are the natural end of what has already begun. The path simply reaches its conclusion. Michael moves next, and his task is different. He is sent to the leaders, to those who chose, not in confusion, not in weakness, but with full awareness. They knew. They understood the boundary. They spoke the oath. They bound themselves together so that none could turn back. And now they are bound, not for a moment, not for a season, but for what the text describes as 70 generations, a way of saying, for the full appointed time, until everything reaches its completion. They are sealed beneath the earth, removed from influence, held in a place where they cannot continue what they began. This is not immediate final judgment. This is containment, a stopping, a holding, until the time comes when everything is brought fully into the light. And this distinction matters because it reveals something about the nature of justice. It is not rushed. It is not reactive. It unfolds in stages. First, the stopping of harm. Then, the holding. And finally, the full accounting. And alongside all of this, something else is spoken. Something that could easily be overlooked, but carries immense weight. God declares that the earth will be cleansed, that what has been corrupted will not remain that way forever, that a time is coming when righteousness will take root again, when peace will not be temporary, but lasting. This is not spoken after everything is fixed. It is spoken in the middle of the process, while the binding is happening, while the consequences are still unfolding, while the visible world has not yet changed. Because from the perspective of heaven, the outcome is not uncertain. It is already known. And here, something begins to settle. 1. Something that reaches beyond the ancient story, into this moment, into the quiet space where you are resting now. Because whatever you have seen, whatever you have experienced, whatever has felt unresolved or unfair or left without answer, it has not disappeared. It has not been ignored. It has been seen, fully, clearly, without distortion. And the response, whether visible yet or not, is already in motion. You do not have to carry the burden of making everything right. You do not have to hold every unanswered question, every injustice, every weight. Because there is a place beyond what you can see, where everything is already being addressed. With precision, with care, with a depth of understanding that does not miss anything. The watchers chose. They crossed the boundary with full awareness, and they are bound. Nothing escapes, not because there is no mercy, but because there is truth, and truth does not dissolve. It remains. It is accounted for. It is brought into the light at the appointed time. So, as you lie here, breathing slowly, letting your body grow heavier, there is something you can release. You can let go of the need to resolve everything tonight. You can set down the weight of what feels unfinished. You can rest in the quiet certainty that what matters is held, that what has been done is known, that what is broken will not remain broken forever. Breathe. Let your thoughts soften. Let your body sink deeper. Let the stillness carry you. Because the story is not ending here. What has been bound will remain. What has been spoken will come to pass. And what comes next will reveal not only justice, but something even deeper. Rest now and let that truth hold you. There is a moment, if you have ever stood beneath a truly dark sky, far from the lights, far from the noise, when something inside you becomes still, not because you try to quiet it, but because what you are looking at is so vast, so ordered, so quietly beautiful that your thoughts simply fall silent. The stars, stretched across the darkness, unmoving and yet always moving, distant and yet somehow present, like a language you do not fully understand, but feel deeply. Most people see that sky and then return to their lives. But Enoch did not look away. He noticed, he wondered, and in his journey, he was given something unexpected. Not another vision of judgment, not another revelation of fallen beings, but something quieter, something steady. He was shown the sky. Not as we casually see it, not as a distant decoration, but as a system, a structure, a living testimony to something deeper. An angel stood beside him, Uriel, the light of God, and he spoke, not with urgency, not with weight, but with calm clarity. Follow me, and I will show you how the heavens move. And so Enoch followed, and what he saw was not chaos, not randomness, but order, precise, measured, intentional. He saw the sun, not simply rising and setting, as we so often take for granted, but moving through gates, paths, 12 openings along the horizon, through which the light enters and departs, according to a pattern that does not change. 6 to the north, 6 to the south. And as the sun moves through them, the days grow longer, then shorter. The seasons shift. Summer, winter, spring, autumn, each one arriving, not by chance, but by design. Every movement accounted for. Every change measured. There is no drifting, no uncertainty, only rhythm. And then the moon, gentle, quieter, but no less precise. Waxing and waning, growing in light, then fading again, in a cycle that repeats again and again without fail. Night after night, it changes, not randomly, but in exact proportion, a rhythm that can be followed, tracked, trusted, and from these movements, something emerges. Time. Not just passing, not just slipping away, but structured, ordered, held within a pattern that repeats faithfully, without interruption, without interruption. This isn't to un. This interruption. End to end to end. This is days, weeks, seasons, years. Each one part of something larger, something designed to hold meaning, not just measure it. And here, something begins to unfold. Because what Enoch is being shown is not simply how the sky works. He is being shown what it means. The world below had begun to lose its center. Time had become something to use, something to fill, something to chase. But in the heavens, time was not chaotic. It was purposeful. Each movement, each cycle, each return carried intention. The sun does not forget its path. The moon does not lose its rhythm. The seasons do not arrive late or fail to come. Everything continues. faithfully. And this is the message written across the sky, not in words, but in movement. Not in sound, but in repetition. I am faithful. What I have set in motion, I sustain. What I have spoken, I keep. And as Enoch watches, as he listens, as he begins to understand, he sees something the world below had forgotten. The heavens were never meant to be tools of control, never meant to be read as omens or manipulated for power. They were meant to be a witness, a reflection, a declaration that above the shifting, uncertain, often broken world of humanity, there is something unchanging, something steady, something that does not drift. And this mattered more than it might first appear, because the world Enoch came from had been corrupted not only in behavior, but in perception. The knowledge given by the watchers had twisted the way people saw the sky. Instead of seeing faithfulness, they saw opportunity. Instead of seeing order, they saw power. Instead of receiving, they tried to control. And in doing so, they lost something essential. They lost alignment. Because when you no longer recognize what something is meant to point to, you begin to use it instead of understanding it. Uriel did not simply show Enoch the mechanics. He restored the meaning. He showed him that time is not empty. That each day is not just something to pass through, but something held, something given, something placed within a larger story. And here, as you rest, breathing slowly, letting your thoughts soften, there is something in this that reaches into your own life. Because it is easy in the world you live in to feel like time is slipping away, days blending together, moments passing without meaning, everything moving, but without direction. But the sky above you, even now, is still moving in that same rhythm. The same sun rising, the same moon turning, the same patterns continuing without interruption. The faithfulness has not changed, even when everything below feels uncertain, even when life feels unstructured, overwhelming, or unclear. The order remains, the rhythm continues, and the one who set it in motion has not stepped away, has not forgotten, has not lost control. So let that settle gently into the quiet place within you. You are not drifting as much as it may feel that way. You are held within something ordered, something known, something guided. You may not see the full pattern. You may not understand every movement, but you are within it, and it is steady. It is faithful. It is continuing, even now. Breathe slowly. Let your body rest deeper. Let your thoughts soften further. Because just as the sun will rise without your effort, just as the night will pass without your control, there are things being held, carried, sustained, beyond what you need to manage. You do not have to hold everything together. You can rest within what is already being held. And as the sky continues its quiet movement above you, let that be a gentle reminder that faithfulness has not left this world. It is written in light across the darkness. And it is still speaking, even now, as you drift slowly into rest. There are moments in a story where everything that came before begins to gather, slowly, quietly, like distant echoes moving toward a single point, until suddenly, without warning, you realize that all the questions, all the tension, all the waiting have been leading here. This is that moment. Enoch has seen the world below, fractured, drifting, overwhelmed by forces it could not understand and could not control. He has seen the consequences of choices made in full awareness, the spread of corruption, the weight of suffering rising from the earth, like a quiet cry that could not be silenced. He has seen heaven respond, not with panic, not with haste, but with a precision so exact that every movement carried meaning. He has walked through the unseen layers of reality, through the places where winds are kept, where time is measured, where souls are held, where justice waits, not forgotten, but not yet complete. And now, as though everything he has seen is being drawn together, he is shown something that stands at the center of it all. Not an idea, not a system, but a presence, a figure. And at first, it is almost difficult to describe, because what he sees does not belong fully to language. It carries a weight, a stillness, a kind of quiet authority that does not need to announce itself. He sees the throne again, the same overwhelming presence, the Ancient of Days, the source, the origin, the one before whom even the highest beings lower their gaze. And beside that throne, there is another, not separate, not distant, but distinct, a presence that feels both hidden and revealed at the same time. And the name is given gently, almost as though it has always been known. The Son of Man. Let that rest for a moment. The Son of Man. Not explained immediately, not defined in human terms, but spoken in a way that carries something deeper, something that must be felt before it can be understood. Enoch watches, and what unfolds is not a beginning, but a revelation. This figure is not new. He is not created in this moment. He is not arriving for the first time. Before the sun moved through its gates, before the moon began its quiet cycle, before the stars were placed across the sky, his name was already known, already spoken in the presence of God. This is not the introduction of something. This is the unveiling of what has always been. And as Enoch continues to see, the depth of this vision begins to widen, because this figure is not passive. He is not simply present. He is given authority, a place beside the throne, a role that touches everything Enoch has already witnessed. The brokenness of the world, the cries of the suffering, the corruption that spread without restraint, the waiting of the righteous, the unanswered questions, and all of it moves toward him. And he does not turn away. He receives it, not with distance, not with indifference, but with a kind of understanding that feels complete, as though nothing is hidden from him, nothing misunderstood, nothing overlooked. And here, the vision begins to shift again, because this authority is not cold greed. It is not distant power, separated from those it governs. It carries something else, something that feels near. He is described as a light, a refuge, a place of rest for those who are weary, those who have carried the weight of the world for too long, those who have walked through darkness and wondered if anyone truly sees. This is not just a judge. This is someone who knows, someone who understands, someone who stands at the meeting point between heaven and humanity. And suddenly, everything connects. The cries that rose from the earth are not lost. They are received here. The justice that was promised is not abstract. The abstract, it is carried here. The restoration that was spoken begins here. And this is why this moment is the turning point, because everything that felt unresolved now has a center. Everything that felt scattered now has direction. This Everything that felt uncertain now has an ending, already held, already known. Enoch does not see every detail. He does not see how this figure will move through time, how this presence will one day step into the world in a way that can be touched, seen, heard. He does not see the path of suffering, or the quiet acts of love, or the moments that will unfold in human history. But he sees enough to understand that the story is not drifting, enough to know that what has been broken will not remain broken, enough to rest in the certainty that the ending is already secure. And as you lie here, breathing slowly, letting your body soften, there is something in this vision that reaches toward you. Because whatever your day has carried, whatever questions remain, whatever feels unfinished or unclear, you are not outside of this story. You are not beyond this awareness. The same presence that Enoch saw, the same figure, hidden before the beginning, revealed in the fullness of time, is not distant from you. He sees fully, completely, without confusion, without delay. Do. And more than that, he understands, not in a distant way, not as an observer looking from far away, but as one who stands close enough to carry what you cannot, close enough to hold what feels too heavy, close enough to bring everything, in time, into its rightful place. So let your breathing slow even more now. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Let the need to understand everything gently fade. Because you do not need to hold the ending. You do not need to resolve every question or carry every weight into the night. The ending is already held, secure, certain, unshaken, and at the center of it all is the Son of Man, known before the beginning, present within the story, waiting, not with distance, but with quiet nearness. So rest now. Let your thoughts soften. Let your body grow heavy, and allow this truth to carry you gently into sleep. You are seen, you are known, and you are held within a story whose ending is already secure. There is a moment before something irreversible happens, a quiet stillness that settles over everything, as though the world itself is holding its breath, as though creation knows, even when people do not, that what is coming cannot be stopped. The world in the days of Noah had reached that moment, not suddenly, not in a single day, but slowly, steadily, through generations of choices, through the spread of corruption, through the quiet turning away from what was true, until the distance between what humanity was created to be and what it had become was no longer a distance that could be crossed. It had become a separation, a fracture, too deep to repair from within. Enoch had seen it. He had walked through the reality beneath it, witnessed the response of heaven, seen the binding, the containment, the promise that restoration would come. And now, that restoration would begin, not gently, not gradually, but completely, through the flood. But before the waters came, there was a man. Noah. He lived in the same world as everyone else, breathed the same air, walked the same ground, heard the same voices, saw the same violence, the same distortion, the same quiet unraveling of everything that once, macing, held meaning. But something in him remained different. Not because the world had not touched him, but because he had not let it define him. He walked with God in the same quiet way Enoch had, not with perfection, not with complete understanding, but with faithfulness, step by step, day by day. And God spoke to him, not through distance, not through mystery alone, but directly, a warning and a command. The earth is filled with violence, and it cannot continue. Make yourself an ark. Now pause here and let that settle. Because this was not a simple instruction. There had never been anything like it. No flood of this scale had ever been seen. No vessel like this had ever been built. There was no example, no model, no community that understood what he was being asked to do. Only a word and a choice, to trust it. So Noah began, not in a moment of dramatic transformation, not with sudden clarity, but with action. He gathered the wood, measured the space, laid the first beams, and day after day, he continued. The ark did not appear overnight. It rose slowly, plank by plank, piece by piece, through ordinary days, through seasons that passed without visible change, through years that stretched longer than expectation. Imagine him in the early morning light, the air still, the sound of his work breaking the quiet, hammering, cutting, lifting, his sons beside him, learning, questioning, wondering. People passing by, watching, whispering, perhaps laughing, perhaps shaking their heads at something that made no sense. Because from the outside, there was no reason, no sign, no evidence, only a man building something that had no place in the world as it was. And yet, he continued, because faithfulness does not always look like certainty. Sometimes it looks like returning to the same work, again and again, even when nothing around you confirms that you are right. He built, through doubt, through silence, through the weight of knowing something others did not, and slowly, the ark took shape. Not just as a structure, but as a space. A place of preservation, a place set apart from what was coming, because what was coming would not leave anything unchanged. And then the moment arrived, not announced, not warned with final signs, but simply present. The sky opened, and at the same time, the earth responded. The fountains of the deep burst forth. Water from above and water from below, meeting in the middle, rising, covering, filling every space, every valley, every place where life had once moved freely. The rain did not stop. It continued, steady, unbroken, as though the boundaries that once held it back had been removed. And the waters rose. First the low places, then the fields, then the hills until even the mountains disappeared beneath the surface. The world, as it had been known, was gone. Now listen carefully, because this moment is often misunderstood. This was not destruction for its own sake. This was not anger without purpose. This was, as the ancient understanding reveals, something more precise. Surgery. When something has become too corrupted to heal, too damaged to restore from within, the only way forward is to remove what cannot remain, so that what can live may continue. The flood was not the beginning of judgment. It was the completion of it. Everything that had been set in motion, everything that had been allowed to unfold, everything that had been addressed, step by step, now reached its final stage, the cleansing. And through it all, the ark remained, not untouched by the storm, not removed from the waters, but held, lifted, carried. It rose with the very force that destroyed everything else, because what is aligned is not removed from difficulty. It is sustained within it. Inside, life remained, quiet, protected, preserved. The animals, the family, the breath of something that would continue beyond the ending of what had come before. Days passed, then more. The rain ceased, but the waters remained, covering everything, holding the world in a suspended stillness. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, they began to recede. The surface lowered. The peaks returned. The shape of the world began to reappear, and the ark came to rest. Not drifting forever, not lost, but placed exactly where it needed to be. On solid ground, a new beginning, but not a return to what had been, because something had changed. The world after the flood was not the same world that existed before it. The corruption had been removed, the structure reset, the possibility restored. And here, as you rest, breathing slowly, letting your body sink deeper into stillness, there is something in this story that reaches into your own life, because there are moments when things feel overwhelming, when circumstances rise like water, when what is happening feels beyond your control, beyond your ability to manage or understand. And in those moments, it is easy to feel lost. But the story of the flood holds something steady. You are not alone in the waters. You are not without a place of holding. You are not drifting without direction. There is something, even now, that sustains, that carries, that preserves what matters, even when everything else feels uncertain. Then, you do not have to control the storm. You do not have to hold everything together. You can rest in the same quiet trust that carried Noah through days he could not fully understand. Breathe slowly now. Let your thoughts soften. Let your body grow heavy, because just as the waters rose and then receded, ding. Just as the ark was carried and then brought to rest, there is movement, even in what feels still. There is purpose, even in what feels overwhelming. And there is a place, even now, where you are held. So rest, let go, and allow yourself to be carried gently into peace. Now, let everything you have heard settle gently. Not as information, not as something to analyze, but as something to rest within. You do not need to hold every detail of the story. You do not need to understand every part. You only need to remain here, in the quiet, where something deeper can begin to take root. Breathe. slowly, in and out. Let your body grow heavier, your thoughts softer, as though they are drifting further away from the surface and moving into a place that is still and calm. And in this stillness, let these words come to you, gently, slowly, like a whisper carried on the air. God sees, not in part, not occasionally, but fully. Everything you carry, everything you have felt, everything that has gone unnoticed by others, everything is seen. There is nothing in your life that has been overlooked. Nothing hidden, nothing dismissed, nothing forgotten. Breathe in and let that settle. God sees. And not only sees, God knows the weight behind your thoughts, knows the meaning behind your silence, knows the moments you could not explain, even if you tried. There is no confusion in his understanding, no distance, no misunderstanding, only clarity and presence. Breathe out slowly and let that truth soften something inside you. You do not have to explain everything. You do not have to make yourself fully understood. You are already known, completely, gently, without judgment. Rest here for a moment. Let that knowing settle deeper. And now, hear this. God is watching over you, not from far away, not as a distant observer, but near, closer than your next breath. Steady, constant, unchanging. Even when your thoughts feel scattered, even when your emotions shift, even when the world around you feels uncertain, his presence does not move. You are not unprotected. You are not alone. You are safe. Let those words repeat. Softly, slowly. You are safe. Again. You are safe. And once more. You are safe. Let that rhythm settle into your breathing, into your body, into the quiet place within you that receives what words alone cannot carry. Breathe slowly now. In and out. There are things in your life that may feel unresolved. Questions that have not been answered. Moments that do not yet make sense. And it is natural to want to hold them, to carry them, to try and understand them before you can rest. But you do not need to hold them tonight. You can place them gently into hands that are already holding everything. Do. Come. God is not waiting to respond. God is already responding. Even when you cannot see it, even when you cannot feel it, even when it seems as though nothing is changing, something is moving. Quietly, precisely, purposefully. You can trust that. Not because everything feels clear, but because the one who holds it is clear. Breathe in peace. And breathe out the need to control. Let it go, slowly, gently, like releasing something into water and watching it drift away, no longer yours to carry. Rest here. Let your body sink deeper, your shoulders soft, your chest open, your breathing slow. And now, let this truth come, quietly. Nothing you have lived has been wasted. No moment of pain, no season of waiting, no silent struggle has been meaningless. Even the parts that feel unclear, Even the moments that feel unfinished are held within something larger, something that is still unfolding. You do not need to see the whole picture. You are already within it, and it is moving towards something whole, something complete, something good. Let that thought settle like a gentle light in the background of your mind. There is direction, even when you cannot see it. There is purpose, even when you cannot feel it. There is care, even when it feels quiet. Breathe slowly now. In and out. If there is anything still lingering in your mind, any tension, any thought that keeps returning, you can let it pass. You do not need to follow it. You do not need to solve it. Just let it drift, like a cloud moving across a wide sky, slowly fading until it is gone. Return to your breath. Return to the stillness. Return to the quiet awareness that you are held. God is with you, not just in the light, not just in the moments that are easy, but here, now, in this stillness, in this quiet, in this moment where everything slows and you begin to let go. Let your body grow even heavier now, as though the surface beneath you is gently pulling you into rest. Your breathing, soft, steady. Your thoughts, quiet, distant. And your heart, at peace. Rest here. You do not need to go anywhere else. You do not need to do anything more. You are already where you need to be. Held, seen, known, safe. And as sleep begins to come, slowly, gently, let this be the last thing your mind holds. God is watching over you. You are safe. You are held. And you can rest. In Jesus' loving name, amen. And now, as this story gently comes to its resting place, let everything begin to soften. There is nothing more you need to follow. Nothing more you need to understand. Nothing more you need to hold on to. The journey has already done its work. The images, the words, the quiet truths, they do not need to stay in your mind. They can drift, slowly, like fading light at the end of the day, leaving only a gentle stillness behind. Breathe in, slowly, and exhale, even more, slowly. Feel your body sinking deeper, as though the surface beneath you is holding you completely now, without effort, without resistance. Your shoulders, soft. Your jaw, relaxed. Your breathing, steady, calm, natural. Everything is slowing down. Everything is settling. And in this quiet, we turn gently into a final prayer, not as something formal, not as something you need to follow closely, but as a soft whisper carried into the stillness of your heart. Heavenly Father, as this night surrounds us and the world grows quiet, we place everything into your hands. Every thought that lingered, every worry that returned again and again, every question that did not find its answer today, we release them now, gently, completely, not because they do not matter, but because they are safe with you. You who see all things clearly. You who understand what we cannot explain. You who hold every detail with perfect care. Let your presence rest here now, softly, quietly, like a covering of peace over every part of this moment. Bring rest to the body that has grown tired, to the mind that has carried too much, to the heart that has been holding more than it needed to. Let sleep come, naturally, gently, like a tide rising in the night, lifting everything, carrying it into stillness. And in that rest, let there be no fear, no tension, no weight, only the quiet assurance that you are near. God is watching over you. You are safe. Let those words remain, softly, repeating, like a gentle rhythm. You are safe. You are safe. You are safe. May your sleep be deep and peaceful. May your breathing remain slow, steady, unbroken. May your thoughts grow quiet, like a calm sky at night, untouched, undisturbed. And as you drift further and further into rest, know this: nothing you carry has been forgotten. Nothing you feel has been overlooked. Everything is held. Everything is known. Everything is safe in Him. May you rest in Christ always. And as your awareness begins to fade and sleep draws closer, let this story return softly in the background, like a gentle echo. Let us return once more to this peaceful story as you continue to drift deeper and deeper into sleep. In Jesus' loving name, Amen.